All right.
Good stuff. Mark, my man.
The audio.
Thanks for,
see if the audio can get that.
yeah,
Might be
it
too
will.
to sight.
We got it. Aaron's video guy. So not my problem. Mark, thanks for joining us, man. Appreciate your time today. Fellow podcaster, huh? How do you like being a podcaster alongside being a photographer?
Sorry, say that again.
How do you like being a podcaster alongside being a photographer?
Oh, it's sharing, man. That's what photography is, right? We share the experience, and podcasting is another platform to do that. And whether it's the audio component or the video component or stills that we can put up, it's another way to relay our passion with people who feel similarly or maybe aren't exposed to it, that learn more about it, right? So it's a different platform, obviously. So it comes with its own challenges, which life is short. You got to try on different hats and, have different experiences. So I enjoy it.
Right on. Yeah. Well, we had your co-host on, Jason Loftus, not too long ago. And
yes.
That was a really was a good episode. And from my point of view and from statistically. So I guess we just have to only have podcasters on, right? No, I'm just kidding. But your podcast is Beyond the Wild, correct? We like to promote, people in the industry. There's enough cake for everyone, as the saying goes, right?
It's a shared industry for sure. I mean, I think the mindset is different, not to key into your title, than it might have been historically. It's not a competition. There's a lot out there. It's a big audience, and one or two or three or four programs don't fill the boat, right? So the audiences we share, we overlap a lot with other nature, wildlife oriented, whether it be photography or not. But it's also with the social media world. I mean, sharing is where it's at, right? I mean, it's the more people we can reach with our care about planet Earth and conservation and inspiring people that way, the better. And so, and I did listen to Jason's podcast episode with you guys. Good. It was fantastic. Yeah. I like the deep thoughts you guys get into. It's a different flavor than other podcasts that way. So,
well, we're going to go there with you today too.
Painful.
Hopefully, naturally. It always seems to go that way.
Sure.
But you said something interesting there. I want to go off from my notes here. You said something along the lines of, I guess there's more room compared to historically. Was there more gatekeeping in the past? I mean, you've been in this industry a respectable amount of time. I guess I'm referring to photography here, not podcasting. Would you say that the photography world's better than it was 5-10 years ago? Worse? Simply different?
Well, it's a long answer. There's so many different ways to look at it, right? It's changed radically what cameras can do, and the internet platforms, the applications of photography are vastly different and much broader than they were traditionally. But traditionally, it was a much smaller field of people. I mean, it was only supported by largely print media back in the day. So there were a fraction of the professional photographers or serious photographers that there are now. But it was more also expense related. It's different now because you can get, every year the cameras evolve and become more automatic and more sophisticated in a way that they perform and give the results almost perfectly to the photographer. It's mainly now a challenge of composition, and the bigger challenge I see for people, as generally speaking, is quality of light in the images. That's something that people don't focus on as much as traditionally with the smaller market of professionals. But what I meant by expense was it was film, right? So every image was 50 cents roughly on professional slide film to take. So that translates into $20,000 or $30,000 a year for a professional photographer. And there has to be funding to support that, plus the expense of travel and all the other things that we still are subject to. So that's changed a lot. But one had to really get into the career path to support the film component of of what it costs to be a serious photographer. So now with digital photography, and we're filming this tonight, I put a 2 terabyte card in the camera to make sure there's enough space. I mean, I can shoot for that on that card for still photos for weeks, right?
Right.
And it doesn't cost anything. So the whole world of photography, and I'm sure your audience is aware of that, it's changed dramatically, and the equipment is far superior. At first, when things went to digital, there was years of speculation in the publishing industry that it would hold up, and resistance to change, because professional slide film was a known commodity for how it would reproduce. When things went digital, there were all kinds of different file formats, all kinds of chaos with monitor calibrations and what digital, the first or second generation of camera, the small megapixels, what the editors would get would run the gamut. And it wouldn't necessarily be the fault of the photographer. It's the equipment and their editing equipment, all those things. It's a learning curve and had to be evolved for the software side of things as well. So, I mean, there's so much that's changed in photography, but there's never been a more exciting time to be in photography, and never, at least in my lifetime, well, obviously, and before that, photography was I'm not quite that old, but put the curtain over your head and hit the bulb. There's never been a time that's been better for people to pick up a camera and collect impressive images, and because of the equipment and the ease of getting in. There's still some cost involved, but it's in the thousands of dollars. It is still substantial. Maybe somebody has to spend $5,000-$10,000 to get the equipment, the lenses they want to achieve the goals they have in mind. But once they have that, it's not like it was with film, right? Where every trip, do you take 100 rolls of film? How do you expose it? You don't know how. This is obvious too. You don't know until how things turned out until you're back. You've got a bracket in the field. Whereas now, what you see is what you get on the mirrorless cameras, which is phenomenal. And again, it's a fantastic time to become a photographer in any genre.
Yeah, is that excitement sheerly because of the low barrier to entry based on cost, or is there anything else that excites you about the current day of digital photography?
Well, no, let's see. The low access point the cost point doesn't excite me, because I'm in the profession either way. It's for people wanting to get into it.
Understood.
It's
exciting for you that other people can come hang, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
can come participate.
Definitely, that's a whole new area of the field of the career of the business that was not really tapped into traditionally. So the whole photo tour and sharing that with people, the experience to have them come along to places that we've learned how to make successful trips from is wonderful. It's joyous, right? On so many levels, and that's new. But to add on to my answer to your question, it's not just the cost point that's appealing; it's the quality of the cameras and what they're capable of doing, so that people are happier with their results right out of the gate sooner. They become better sooner because the equipment is superior from what it used to be. And somebody brought it up on our podcast not too long ago, and I thought it was a very interesting perspective. So especially with photo tours, people get great images right away when the experience happens, and it takes that pressure off of them. It was Tim Irvin, I think, on a recent episode, and he guides as well. But they let their shoulders down, was his description. You relax because they know they've had some success, because the cameras are better than they ever have been. So whether it's an individual doing a trip or whether it's someone like myself guiding other photographers, there's still that quick, faster achievement because of what cameras can do now, compared to even a generation or two of back to DSLRs and before that.
Is that exciting in terms of your own personal let's call it a game, your own personal game, is that something that excites you, or is the traditional way more exciting? I feel like being able to have 20 frames per second and the shutter starts clicking a second before it buffers a second before you even click the shutter to get the shot that you missed. Does that take away some of it's not the way the game was played? It kind of reminds me of the golf diehards that use the wooden sticks and the feathery ball, just to traditionally, like, I'm not using this new equipment and these new balls that go forever. Like, I want to play the way we used to play and challenge myself. I think there was a long period of, like, they had the science to make a ball fly straight. Like, if you set it up right on the tee, it would go straight no matter what you did. But it didn't catch on because it took away some of the challenge, the skill, the effort, the practice to get there, the hours that you put in the field.
Yeah, it's a great question. It depends on where you're coming from and looking at it. For somebody who's learned photography from the traditional ways, this makes it easier. I mean, I've seen reels and memes joking about it on social media where somebody just runs out of the house with a blindfold on, points the camera at the sky.
That's me. I made that exact reel.
Okay, there we are. And you got the shot, right? So
I thought you were being sarcastic and just straight, referencing me. That's amazing.
So yeah, they're awesome, Seth. That summarized it to that extreme, right? Of
yeah.
Where it's going. So but my favorite aspect of wildlife photography, and I know with guests that you've had and guests that we've had on our show, we get into a little bit of that, what feeds them. And mine is the animal behavior. I love working with wild animals in wild places and in the elements and interpreting their behavior to try and get images that relay their natural behavior. It tells the story of how they live in their world and interact with them. The camera to me is a wonderful tool that facilitates that and allows for a profession out of it. And now tours do that. I don't need that. I mean, I still photograph, and there's psychology, which is interesting behind that component of it that I learned when I started tours. But, I don't need a camera to enjoy being there. And it's the animal interaction, and now sharing that with other people and just saying, okay, watch this now. And I can tell what's going to come because of the years I've had with whatever species we're focusing on. And because of their attention to that detail, it happens. I love sharing that with people that join us, or even just friends on trips. But so the cameras, I enjoy the 20 frames a second. I mean, it's extremely rare not to have something turn out now. Mm-hmm. So there's gratification in that. Traditionally, we were shooting 50 ISO or 50 speed slide film, right? Fuji Velvia was the go-to forever. And 50, I mean, if you just think about that for a second, how restricting is that for light? So we would see so much with a lot of animals, especially, all kinds of animals, but ones specifically that I focus on are active early and late in the day. So there'd be many times something wonderfully dramatic was happening, and we would be sitting back and just observing it, which is fine. But as a professional, there's no material coming out of it because it was too dark for 50 ISO. So your question, I love that now we can capture those moments. And like I said, it's rare something doesn't turn out because of the capabilities of the equipment. It does change the landscape professionally because it used to be those that had developed the skill set to work with slides were able to sell them, whereas now everybody can go on a trip of any sort and take 10,000 images, and everybody practically gets wonderful shots, turn out. And then that changes. There's been a lot of change in the landscape of professional photography, and especially wildlife and nature photography, and where the applications are to make revenue because of the abundance of images now.
Yeah, it's true. I was thinking just on our trip where we're in a boat and we're all seeing 15 bears in 3 hours, and probably between the five of us, we had, I'm gonna guess, maybe with the group, 8,000 photos, right? And if that's all film, and you're developing that, that's thousands of dollars. Um, I'm I'm curious so we have a group, we have 5 people on a boat. We're doing the same bears. You mentioned lighting, you mentioned composition. Is there anything else that differentiates in this landscape of photography for professionals to sell? Like, we're all going away from that trip with probably great photos, with great equipment, great lenses. And if we all want to sell, what else is there that differentiates the professional from maybe what's now become a bigger average? The bell curve is pretty big in terms of the average photographer, because the knowledge that we have and the equipment that we have of where things are and the trips that we can book, we can go get amazing photos day one. Last year in Banff, remember the two girls, that this is the first week of wildlife photography, and they're shooting grizzly bears and cubs and elk and the most incredible landscapes in North America, arguably, and getting like upset about missing shots. And I was like, Seth and I were both like, we've been doing this for years. Like, I haven't seen a grizzly bear since I started. Like, you guys need to calm down about being upset about missing a shot. Like, this is the game. You miss shots. Yeah,
if I could shoot a grizzly bear on my first time out, I'm in my yard practicing on chipmunks and blowing it. And
yeah,
it's funny though. But I mean, to add on, Aaron, right? I mean, you don't want to sound sour and be like, oh my God, beginners have it so easy now. I mean, it's great. People get to have these great encounters and it's awesome. And the gear allows people to do that. But yeah, just say what you said, Aaron. If everybody becomes great, is anybody great? Not that it's a competition, but yeah, how do you stand out? How do you continue to push the bar?
Well, access is far more, it's much more common now to know where to go because of social media, right? Before that, people had to dig really hard or get lucky or know somebody who would say, here's where you need to go to see these animals. So that's changed dramatically and flooded the world with wonderful images. Nothing wrong with that. As a professional, or as somebody who was wanting to get the most out of it, everybody on their first trip, or even the first trip of that year to redo a species, shoots like crazy to begin with, just with the excitement of being there, right? Mm-hmm. Not as critical and careful with what they're collecting out of the gate, which makes total sense. But when you're in those opportunities, like you're describing with your recent bear trip, at the end of the day, I always like to have that deep breath and have time to enjoy the whole environment. And not just focus on images, right? Be grateful and have gratitude for where one is and these amazing animals and all the sensory things going on around. That aside, as somebody who's really wanted to capitalize on imagery, it's the variety of images that one can get with different lenses and different light angles and different behaviors as the animals move requires a lot of focus. And instead of just coming out with a few portraits or maybe a close-up in a landscape, there's a whole variety of a wealth of compositions and angles and lighting, and especially throughout the day and as light changes and dramatic effects. So it's training one's eye to the potential of what they can collect, the behavior, the close-ups, the habitat, and maximizing that so that the portfolio is full. So that's maybe where it differentiates. For me, if I'm working with a magazine and wanting to do a feature, I want to make sure I have the images to support that feature. So in my mind, right. And it has to be there when I start it. I can't say I want to write this article and I'll have the images 2 years from now. So on these trips, it's really important to maximize what the animal's doing and playing with the light around them to create a great variety and make a portfolio of dramatically different images from it.
Yeah. I want to tease something out because I think you just hit something with me, and I'm part of the age of new mirrorless cameras. So, shortly after I started, that was in the shopping cart, and it was a Nikon Z, so it wasn't that good. And I still had to work to get those images focused. Yeah. But they've come a long way, I've heard. But I've since jumped ship. But I think
they're awesome now.
Yeah. Awesome. They
had
a minute
right here filming me.
Oh, good.
Not
Great.
the Z, but the Z something.
I love it. I missed a lot about it, but I just couldn't do it. That's a different story. That's a
Where'd
different
you
podcast.
go?
I went to Sony.
Yeah. Okay. Sony's fantastic.
Yeah. I've been happy since. I do miss like the color profile, and Nikon is just a beautiful. Sure. Anyways, when you're describing this and you're describing each click is money in a sense, back in the day, and Seth likes to throw in little age jabs. I just want you to be aware of that as we continue. He often says little things like, when you were first starting out and I was in high school, things like that. But
in the womb.
No, and for journal, like you're going out for a specific shot in mind. And I think that aspect has definitely changed for people. And it's something that people should potentially think about if they're loving photography. Whereas you might go out and say, what ISO film do I need to capture this silhouette of a bear in the landscape? I need this bear to be 100 yards from me. I need this sunset or sunrise to be perfect. And I need it to walk across this sandbar in front of me. And that is the photo I'm going for ahead of time, versus I'm going out with my camera and I'm just going to blast. Here's 100 pictures of a chipmunk. Here's 100 pictures of a squirrel. Here's 100 pictures of a fox that day.
Who loves to edit?
Yeah. But I think going out with, is that something that holds people back in the long term these days? Because you go out with not a clear view of what you want to be shooting and just sort of plateau maybe with like all these pretty good shots, like close-ups of bears. We have 800 close-ups of bears from that day. And then you get back and you're like, how many of these am I going to edit and post? Versus I went out with bears all day. Did I try to get my wide angle out? Did I try to get this shot with it in isolation with just the water in the background? Like, did I try these different things, which would help my portfolio versus just blasting away and feeling like, oh, I got great shots, but I don't know, nothing really stands out. Do you feel like the technology in the long term, unless you really dig past it, can hold people back?
I think, we all have images that move us and that we remember. Now, traditionally, a couple of years ago, Seth, and still to some extent, it's in magazines. We see them, or in books, right? So, or now.
Explain books and magazines to Seth.
I cued in on that jab later. It was a little delayed for me. Sorry, my brain's still developing. That's why.
I'm glad we're recording this here because the GoPro just got too hot and got upset and shut off.
Who makes GoPro?
Interesting.
Nikon?
The Z? No, it's no, it's not Sony. It's GoPro themselves. But the Z9 is still recording, so we'll
beautiful
have
camera.
This vertical. But anyway, I think so. We have those images that move us. That are, there may only be half a dozen for a particular species, and we somehow program our minds to try and emulate them, and they're always there. I don't go in the field, and a few years ago when there was slide film, there weren't different slide films I'd pick from. It was Velvia 50. It had the best color, it had the best grain, and we worked with that, with what light and what was capable. There was Provia 100. We pushed to 200, but it was flatter in color, wouldn't sell as well. So we have these images that move us, that are iconic in our minds, and maybe we have the opportunity on a trip to try and recreate that for ourselves or something close to it. And that's always there. I don't go out with that mindset. I go out with the best tools and equipment I can, and try to stay open to what the experience offers. And what's really magical is even revisiting the same destinations in consecutive years, it's never the same. what you encounter isn't the same, whether it's species or animals or behavior or weather or light. All those variables are shifting, and the multitude of combinations of those create new opportunities every time. And I think part of the thrill and fun of a photographer, someone who's visually creative with this art form, is watching it and doing their best interpretation with the equipment and creating the variety of images as they can. And again, if I was to strongly recommend areas of focus for people, it's quality of light.
Mm-hmm.
That's always been number one. Harsh light midday does nothing. Now, it might on social media, it might, if it's a behavioral video that can tie into a reel with the right song, you never know. But as far as the appeal in the professional realm and publishing or galleries, it's the light, it's the impact of that. Then there's composition and subject, but to pay attention to those details and the cameras. I mean, you can do so much as well in that software now too, right? Post Photoshop or Lightroom can do and have dramatic effects on images, white balance, shifting those things, softening things up for light, making it richer, more vibrant without going too far.
Yeah.
I hope that answered the question.
Yeah. Thank you.
Seth, throw one, man. Throw it down.
Come on.
Well, I'm stoked that I still visualize it popping out the door and doing that. And it was one of those things that's just stuck with me. It's like, yeah, it's going there, but not that far, but it was funny. It was well played.
Thank you. Obviously it's satire. It's a little more involved than that. But so, we were kind of touching on the topic of everyone's getting good images now, right? We just touched on what's required to make maybe a great image, right? So even on another layer, what do you think is going to be required for outdoor nature photographers to continue to make a living? Maybe people who are newer in the fields who don't, I'm sure people have been following your work for a good amount of time, right? What's going to be required, do you think, for people who are looking to do what you do, who lack the experience?
Well, it keeps changing. The opportunities in this field continue to evolve and change, and new ones emerge. And I don't think one can do a clear template like it used to be. There's so many opportunities. I mean, it used to be publishing. One would build a portfolio of quality work and select where they wanted to see it and try.
Mm-hmm.
It's no different than a job application somewhere, right? You go in with and have an interview and see if it works. And in this case, you'd submit your portfolio, but it would have to be tied into some context that relayed or improved on what they were doing. It's very different now. And so there are other ways to do it. And I don't think there's a quick answer to say, hey, this is what you should do if you're new in photography. If I would summarize it as, work on quality images and then think about what motivated that whomever you are to get into it. What excited you about photography? Where did you see it? What is your motivation? And everybody's different. There's doesn't have to be a pressure to make a career out of it for most people. Those that aspire to that, well, it's like anything else in life. You have to go for it if it's your passion. And what makes that possible? Quality, right? If you're going to be a carpenter, or a tradesperson, you do quality work, your reputation will spread and more people will come knocking on your door. Quality is number one. If there's a market or a place where you dream of seeing your work, study it and make sure that your work is as good or better than what's there before knocking. And then historically, it was also you didn't get 3 amazing images and go running to National Geographic and say, hey, I'm the next person that you should be sending out on assignment or hiring. You should buy these 3 images, because what would happen is if they purchased those 3 images and loved it, then they say, okay, what's next? And if you don't have it, that's a problem. So historically, the portfolio had to be deep before really knocking on doors, or deep enough to back it up and keep moving forward to support itself. But that's again, that was the print media industry, which is still viable. It still exists. It's just not as nearly as robust as it used to be. There are still lots of people who prefer to read print. I'm one of them, and I don't think it's an ageism thing, because when I'm on a screen, I'd rather watch a video than read a book on a screen. Or even the social media platforms like Instagram make viewing images so easy, but almost too fast. Right? I mean, how often do we stop, and how quickly do we scroll? And we know we have our network of people we know. So when we see their name come up, then we hit like just automatically because of the way we feel about the person and the images too. But so I think print media has some life still in it. But as far as now getting into it, there's all kinds of different ways to generate revenue. And I'm not sure I'm the one to speak on that, because, I've been in this business for 30 years and I rely on a lot of the traditional contacts and avenues that I have. I do branch out, but there are people who are in the business for 5 years who maybe are doing very well financially in different fields. I still work a lot in stock. And for me, the other thing that grows every year are the photo tours, because I've always, as a biologist and as a wildlife photographer for all these years, and an animal behaviorist, I was only able to share it through articles, through books, or at talks at camera clubs and stuff like that. But to be able to take a small group of people out really is fulfilling as a guide, because of what they experience. And caribou are a species of concern that we've done a lot of work with, and a species that not many people have direct experience with, and that habitat, right? That ecosystem and the environment and all the other animals that are around as well. So to see people arrive out of their busy lives at the beginning of a trip, and day one with that excitement of let's do this, let's make this successful, because everybody behaves that way in our modern society, right? Let's right away make something happen. But after a day or two of being on the land and in the wilderness and subject to the elements and seeing the animals, everybody relaxes, and it's so holistic, really. The senses, everything. So by the end of a week with people, it's grounded myself, but everybody so much that it's tremendously rewarding. And I think for me, this, wildlife and nature photography is very healthy, assuming bad things don't happen in the field, but that's never happened to me. I can touch on all that. How far does one push oneself? But I never feel more content or healthier, happier than after a week in the wild. I mean, how did you guys feel after just being in Alaska? How did that affect you?
I can speak. Yeah. Just right away in the summer when there's daylight for 14, 15 hours, whatever it is, I felt an immediate slow down energy from everyone. Like there's plenty of time to go through this day. That was the immediate feel from people that live there, and then myself, and then the group. And throughout the trip, it was like we could still take an hour nap and have time for dinner, and then drive around and then see sunset. Like there was just an ample amount of time, which helped just slow down the rhythm, because there was no rush. We've been on other trips where you got to choose between dinner and going for sunset. Like you got to make a choice and maybe eat snacks later because everything's going to be closed or whatever it is. But that creates a more rushed energy. I think the vastness and just the scale of everything, again, we talk about it, things that make you feel small or sort of insignificant in a good way. that was very present in Alaska. Let's drive forever to the next town. There's mountains everywhere. There's bears like it was wild. It was wild. And we were in a pretty populated area of Alaska. So even to feel that there, I think just shows how vast it is. Flying in was amazing. Just like, whoa, like look at these mountains and ice fields and glaciers, and where are we? Like where are we landing? I hope this goes well. Yeah, I think there's I could talk about it forever, and we probably will recap the episode or the trip at some point on an episode. But yeah, it was truly amazing, and I left thinking I can't wait to go back. Which doesn't happen all the time on any trip, personal or work or what have you. But I really wanted to explore more. It left me wanting more. I just know there's so much more to explore there. So that's my piece, Seth.
Yeah, mine's going to be interesting. I had a hell of a time. This was our 3rd annual photography retreat. I've loved every single one. Funny enough, we get back from Alaska and I get sick immediately. I never get sick in the summer. And I think you'll find this interesting, and you'll probably maybe coach me or help me learn a thing or two, Mark. So when I'm with Aaron running these photo trips, I am so excited, first of all, to be in a place where you're going to get really great experiences, meet cool people, take great photos, take great videos, whatever your thing is. My head is so wrapped up in, I want to make sure people are having the best time. 10 out of 10. I am constantly thinking about that to a point where I can't turn it off sometimes. And I think it just activates my nervous system. And in this case, to the point where I got home, I just let down and got smoked with a cold. Right. And I guess I'll turn my experience into a question. How do you kind of settle in when you're responsible for people's paid experience on a trip?
I think the more you do it, that you will be more relaxed with it. And I don't, at the beginning of a trip, I'm not, I guess, yeah, I'm never uptight about it. The only wish that occupies the front of my mind is that within the first couple of days, we have a magical experience for them to let everybody relax into it. Doesn't have to be day one. I don't mind day one being a good workout, fun day in the field where all kinds of other things are experienced, but maybe not the highlight. But again, we never know what will unfold. But that's the only pressure, if I was to describe one that I feel, is that they get the most out of it. I care tremendously that every guest walks away thinking it was one of their trips of a lifetime. I know that's cliche, but there are so many opportunities. And like Aaron, you were saying, you could go to Alaska every year for the rest of your life and not fill your boots. There's so much to experience. So my goal is to focus and make sure all the different personalities are getting what they need, and they come away feeling that. But there might be days where it's pouring rain or extremely windy, and all these elements make people feel alive, though, too. I mean, as long as you have the blissful light days to complement those. So I don't mean this in any egotistical way. I think I just know I've done this professionally so long, not the guiding part, the trips myself, that I have confidence that people coming along that I can manage it and deliver what they need. The question is always, and this is where the thrill is wildlife. Every trip's worked out, but there's never a guarantee. But that's where the thrill comes, because there's an expectation, and it's not always, not every day is successful, or every outing or every hike. But that's what builds so that when it is, it's a tremendous rush and joyous, and then a huge celebration after. So I feel what you're saying, and if I was to liken it, when I was starting out and doing remote trips where I'd allocated, 3 weeks to go into the interior and expect to come out with a lot of images to carry me through the next year of publishing, right? So that pressure was there. And I think the same kind of thing happened to me that you were describing, Seth, where it was almost too intense because I had such expectations on myself.
Mhm.
And the same thing would happen. It would wear me down over the trip because it's physically demanding.
Mhm.
And then you do relax when you come back. But I guess what happened after a few trips, my portfolio was big enough that you hope it's productive any given trip due to the expense and the hope of creating images that can affect people, but it wasn't do or die. So I relaxed more into it.
Right.
And the other thing I just very quickly was alluding to just prior to asking about your Alaska trip is the kind of zen you go through from day one to the end of your trip. So the person who lands there on any of these trips is going to be totally excited. Whether you're in Africa or wherever you might be, you're flying over the mountains. It's surreal. You're feeling very alive and loving every moment of it. But I think what's healthy about these trips that is really advantageous in our day and time right now is from day 1 to day 10, you come out a different person. And it's not permanent, but it's just taken your natural energy and rhythm and knocked it down to a calmer, healthier level, more perceptive, more relaxed. And I feel that on trips. Whereas, if I'm editing for 3 months, I'm just wound because I'm on a computer and I'm promoting and I'm on social media and this stuff. And then I go in the field for a couple of weeks and come back. It's a total recharge. I'm just like plugging in my batteries. And so that's what I was asking, is like, did you feel that from the beginning of your trip? I mean, Alaska is so much to take in. And Aaron, what you were saying makes total sense too, that in the summertime, the days are amazing because they're so long and you just go with it. I mean, I've done summer trips where the first 3 days are just like, I just love it. But day 4 is like, you're toast.
Yeah. Yeah.
So summer can
That's the
keep
other
you
side of that
riding.
coin. Yeah.
Yeah. I prefer the autumn trips or the spring trips when the day length is more what we're used to. So we still can get enough rest.
Yeah.
As opposed to winter's too short, but it is what it is. The seasonality is what we work with.
Mhm.
So on your trip, did you feel that it basically, it's like you meditated for 10 days. You came out a different person as far as your energies, right? I mean, you're feeling more hippie at the end of your trip, more part of the land, more. Did it resonate that way?
Yeah. For me, it does. It clicks in right away. I feel like I came a little bit early, so I was on my own for a day and a half. A day before people were coming in, getting stuff situated, getting the rental van, getting ready to go, picking people up at the airport. And that time that I kind of had to just explore on my own in Alaska was really cool. And I said immediately felt like this, like slow down, like this, whoo, like just this complete slowdown over the week, like Seth's having. I don't think I have it as severe as him, but caring about the schedule and what are we doing? Are people happy? Some people want to do this hike. Some people don't want to do this hike. Is it okay that they stay home? Are they grumpy about it? Are they okay with it? Like trying to read the room, that does get exhausting. In like a normal sense, it's just we're not worried about ourselves and the images we're getting. We're worried about them having a good time and making sure. And a lot of our stuff, because the days were so long on this trip, were pretty optional, and we had a varying age group of guests. So we knew, like, hey, we just had dinner. We're going to drive around and maybe do a quick hike, but feel free to relax here and get some sleep. Or if you want to come, let's go. So we had a lot of those options. But if people keep saying no, like we're going to relax here, you start to question, you start to wonder, they're relaxing a lot in the Airbnb. And I'm not saying even our group, I'm just saying in general, like this kind of thing would happen where you could say like, ooh, they're saying no to a lot of things, but they're still having a blast. They had a full day. They had dinner. They got their photos. We went on a boat tour. They just don't want to go on the 9th hike of the week. They want to get some sleep, and that's okay. And I think allowing people to be adults and make decisions and being okay with it, I think that's part of just growing up and having the experience of these trips over and over and over, where you realize like, okay, people have options and they're okay. They'll be
Totally.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I think that's the thing I sometimes need to remind myself, because I feel like I'm pretty centered and zen and chill in my everyday life. Like I'm surrounded by the forest where I'm living, and my mentality is kind of, I'm in Alaska for 6 days. Let's go hard. Right? Like
Yeah.
I don't know when I'll be back. I know this is such a special and unique place on Earth.
Right.
I want to do the 9th hike.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
And you'll have
I-
guests that feel that way too, right?
you don't,
Mhm.
yeah, you'll
Some-
have guests that feel that way, but you also have guests that
Yeah.
don't. And then I think sometimes I need to remind myself, just because they don't want to go on the 9th hike doesn't mean that you're not necessarily delivering. I don't
Mhm.
get to the point where I'm like having an anxious moment about it. I'm just very hyper fixated on, I want these people to have a good time. I want these people to have a good time. I want them at the end of the trip saying, I will go on this 100% again, 10 out of 10. Otherwise, to me, it's, you could have done a lot better. And so I don't maybe necessarily have the Zen moment that you described while I'm there. I think I get home and I reflect on it and I'm like, wow, that was so cool. I can let down and kind of mellow and melt into the recent nostalgia of it.
There's
Yeah,
cool
it carries forward.
Mark, I'm sure you've had this too. There's these cool moments with group members, whether last year it's some getting their first, learning how to use a camera and then getting photos of grizzly bears or bears and these landscapes and starting a social media account and like getting into photography for, it's been a year and some of our members are like really blossoming and you're like, they start from nothing. And then that trip, look how far they've come. And in this trip, you have these moments like one of our guests, Karen, came home and bought the Z8, she's like, I need a new camera. I'm in love with photography again. My stuff was old. I'm going head in. I already bought it. Like it's coming the next day. And that's cool because it's just these little like, we did a good enough job. People had fun enough where now one person, even if it's just the one, is addicted to photography and bought new equipment and wants to dive into it a little bit more.
One of us.
Yeah, we got them. So you have these moments with group members and where they share a photo where they edit something in a cool way and you were on the boat with them and you're like, oh, I didn't see that look. And they were able to do something and it just makes you go like, oh, that was so fun. Where you reflect and you see their growth, you see their excitement. It's been 2 weeks and our group is still talking and chatting and almost every day sharing
Bonding.
little things. Yeah, bonding. And it continues. And I'm sure they'll, like our other groups, we have connections for life. So there is a special thing to it. There's a special energy to it. Of course, we want everyone to have a great time and, like that goes without saying, but
Well, you do your best for sure.
yeah, do your best.
I always try to figure out before guests come on what their take is going to be on social media. I can't figure you out, Mark. So,
Oh, really?
is it something you love, hate? You've mentioned it a lot in this episode. I predict that it's not necessarily something you're like, I love it. It's so great. I'm sure. I feel like I'm going to guess, and you're probably going to tell me I'm wrong, but I think it's another way for you to consume the natural world that you love so much, keep up with the people in your circle who you care about, get inspired. And I feel like you view it as a tool to continue your business and your photographic journey. Is that maybe the good? And if so, also tell me the bad, maybe if there is any.
I enjoy it thoroughly.
Thoroughly. Okay.
Yeah. No, it's a great sharing platform. I think it has to be moderated in how much time and how much seriousness people take it for. I do enjoy keeping up with friends. You know, we don't often share the same space, maybe once or twice a year on trips or phone calls here and there, but every couple of days, seeing a friend's image is a way to connect because of comments. So I think I enjoy that. I enjoy seeing the potential of what's out there in different places, learning about destinations and types of photography that, well, it's right at your fingertips. So, and it is important. It's become the strongest sharing tool out there. You know, we all had websites and we still do. And I mean, the meat of it's on the website, but you know, even our editors pick off the social media more often than the website. And it's like, oh, that shot. They want that shot that they just saw, you know, and so it's useful that way. It's visually the strongest communication tool that I know of right now, and I do enjoy it. It's just I have to. I mean, everybody's different, but at each day take a step back from it and be in reality, and not something I would caution aspiring photographers is not to let it dissuade your interest because you see images that are seemingly perfect. The experiences on this planet in your lifetime are there for you too, and it will be different for you and equally rewarding. And whether or not the image looks the same as the iconic one that you might have seen, it's always worth doing, and it's much richer in person than it is on a screen because there's all the senses. It's happening. That bear is there. Whether or not to get the image, the most important thing was you just spent days with this animal that was just incredible. So to stay motivated that way and to live life and do the trips. But I enjoy social media because it's a wealth, just a stream of visual delight. It's just, I think, again, just to caution not to let it overwhelm.
Where does it rank in the priorities for you as a photographer who does this for a living? Where does it lay in the priority of things to do?
I don't, I hear more and more, and understandably so, photographers, people starting out saying, well, they're getting a shot to post. But the images to me, I mean, I enjoy sharing the story, and I can't do that as well on a post unless I made a 10-minute reel describing with enthusiasm what the whole experience was like. It's just a snippet. It's just a window to see that visual. So it's, yeah, I don't, sorry, I've lost track of your question. What was it again?
Well, in terms of, like, let's say you could be focusing on, I'm going to, plan the itinerary for our next photo trip, or I'm going to post this reel today, or I'm going to send an email to my editor. Like, where does it fall in the chain of?
It's total balancing act. Business is like that, right? I mean, I've had many colleagues that are career wildlife photographers who are everything from the CEO to the mail person to the, every aspect of the job has to be completed. And social media is an important marketing tool now. It's a sharing tool and a marketing tool, but all the other things still have to get done. So it's a challenge of balancing one's time. It is a very powerful and important tool, I believe, from my experience. It's not a guarantee. It's not, you can't flip a switch and have social media make it work for anybody necessarily immediately. It's a lot of commitment, a lot of time, a lot of good fortune. And of course, there's, for those that are super serious about it, thinking about the algorithms and what needs to be done for growth that way. And that's where other things come into potential. If they are focused on that and they do get the kind of followers that brands, will get on board and put money towards, then that's another way to generate revenue. But as a career, there are all kinds of aspects to it. Clicking the shutter is just one part of it. Posting a picture is advertising. It's just another part. It used to be we would send 300 images to an editor in slides, and they'd be like, here are these 300. I hope you like 50 of them, right? And they'd hold 50, and that's what would get used over the next year. It's not Now this is how we show it. It's just it's one aspect, and I think mentally it's got to be kept that way. But it's a little more complicated because we're sharing with friends, people we know, and we're seeing their work simultaneously. So it's not a one-way street. It's not just, hey, look at my stuff. It's, I also enjoy yours.
Right.
And for what it's worth, and for whatever level, the idea of sharing from podcasts and these big platforms, photography is becoming, in my mind, one doesn't have to be critical. It's a positive experience. Photographing, visually seeing these things happen, whether it's a butterfly in the garden or a polar bear, it's all wonderful, and it's sharing that, and there's no need for any criticism. So to me, social media, all the interactions are positive. And if I'm on a tour guiding, I don't ever have an interest in critiquing people's images as far as being anywhere negative. What's important to me is, like you, Seth, and I'm sure Aaron as well, is that they're having a great time. And if they come to me and ask, I'm happy to say, well, try this. Or more often, if I see them missing an opportunity, I'll say, hey, what do you think about this? And try this shot. And then briefly on the psychology bit, when I started guiding tours, I wasn't photographing as much. I keep the camera in the pack because I've already got 50,000 pictures of caribou, right? It's not what still magic happens, and I get super excited just like day one. It's something about wildlife photography, the interactions, it doesn't get old. But I wasn't shooting, and it was interesting that my guests, some of them I knew quite well, were like, is it not good enough, man? Why aren't you shooting? And it's like, no, it's great. I just want to make sure you guys are getting what you want. So then I was like, okay, then if I'm shooting and show enthusiasm, then that helps them realize that it's great. Things are good.
Yeah, that's a good
So
point.
I try to do that while also encouraging them and just watching that they're having a good time with their own experience. It's their own experience. They don't have to come away with a number one award-winning shot. And to them, what matters is to them it is, right? And more so the experience. They leave whatever species the tour is about, they leave as an ambassador of that species and love it and appreciate what they are. Yeah. All those layers to me. I love the psychology of it. I love the personalities and the challenges of that, and trying to make sure that everybody gets the most out of those layers of the experience, not just the photography. It's a vehicle too, right? It's a tool, but which, Seth, as you pointed out, after the trip, you can soak it in and reflect on what happens, and that's the joy of. We all remember our experiences, and we all miss. No matter how experienced we are, we miss images every trip. It happens. Nobody's perfect, but photography and the videos allow us to go back and relive these lifetime highlights. And that's what Instagram's like that too, in the sense that I love putting a reel together. It takes more time, but it's like it encapsulates a bit of that mood. And for me, it's like a photo album. The Instagram is. So I just came back from a family trip to Australia. We had an amazing day with humpback whales. So I did a reel, and it just, it's not something I need all of the audience to love necessarily. For me, it means something. It's it's like a photo album. And I think that's nice about everybody's page. You can see what moves these people and their history of their trips and where, what is meaningful to them. So I think there's more to it when you get to know different people and their pages than just the quick click through the feed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I wish people would trend away from the trends and do what actually is meaningful in some sort of way, and it being more authentic to either their personality. Their personality can be creative and trendy, but just to blindly copy. Like there's this new one, it's like a 1 second video, and it's like, do this 1 second thing with a beep and it'll go viral. And I've seen 1,000 of them, and it's nothing. It's So there's no substance. It's just about people watching it or getting stuck on it for a while, and that makes you feel good somehow. I wish we would get away from that and do whether it takes 90 seconds or 60 seconds to show your Alaska trip, and this isn't going to do well because people are going by it so quickly, but the people that care and the audience that cares and you that care and whomever will actually watch it and get some true value out of it. I wish that were the trend of it. But
well, they do though, right? Those that do care, and that's who it's for. Right. You can do a whole bunch of reels on your Alaska trip. Tell the whole story, right?
Yeah, for sure. I have a somewhat maybe controversial question. Since I've started, which again isn't too long ago in terms of the wildlife game and what have you, there's you go on to social media and it is a different environment than even it was 5 years ago. Like 5 years ago, and maybe it's the algorithm or who you follow or what you tend to do, but it just seemed few and far in between, like these amazing encounters or these amazing photos, and you would truly be inspired. Now it is very inundated. And maybe it's because of our Alaska trip, but I can't go on social media without seeing 10,000 grizzly bear, brown bear, amazing photos. And then the trend of, I feel like, reels that are getting closer and closer and closer and closer and closer to animals. And those are the ones that tend to get a lot of attention because obviously closeness to another being and another animal, that is exciting, that is thrilling. As a biologist and author, someone that's been in this for a long time, the ethics in photography, the ethics in guiding, in biology, the animal behavior, what have you, do you see a dangerous trend for those that don't know? You did say it is easy for people to get into photography. Seth and I know many people that just picked up a camera and they go straight to Yellowstone and are photographing grizzly bears off the road and getting super, super close. Do you think there's some responsibility that needs to be held in terms of what we're showing?
Well, I don't think that's going to change because the broader audience, the human nature, wants that walk the edge experience, the thrill. The wildlife nature photographer component of Instagram is tiny compared to the world at large and what's consumed that way. So it's always going to be the eye candy that gets of that intensity that gets the most traction, in my opinion. And those that want that will continue to do that. As far as I think my wildlife photography doesn't usually. There are a few places, but doesn't usually mean leaning out a window of a car and standing on asphalt and taking pictures. It's still meaningful to do that because you're still seeing the animal. But I like to be hiking, a long way and having more intimate experiences in wild places that are not often near people. Some of them are, but I prefer it not and quieter. And so I think it's for those that are able to do that, and it takes experience, and that's where guiding comes in. And I'm not trying to pitch this hard, but it's not the point of bringing it up. But learning from somebody how to safely go into the backcountry or into the wilderness to be a wildlife photographer, doing trips with experienced people is helpful to learn how to do it. Or, we repeating, and I'm sure you guys too will have repeating guests who just like the comfort of your knowledge with different species or even the same one, and not having to stress about what's going to happen each day on their own and go with you. But as far as the ethics of proximity, common sense with anything we do in life, is important. And people, to me, if you have common sense, you don't need to put yourself, people around you, or the animal at risk for the sake of a photograph. It's a photograph, right? Or video. In our telephoto lenses, one of the reasons, I've been Nikon my whole career. I did shoot Canon for a bit. Fantastic. Canon's fantastic. Sony's fantastic. There's so many great pieces of equipment out there. So I'm not necessarily doing a big pitch on Nikon, but the 800 millimeter is why I went back to Nikon from Canon. And the kind of power with the 45 megapixel sensor on an 800 millimeter, what you can accomplish is amazing now. You don't need to be close. And so I there are times that it happens, right? I mean, I can be focused on a moose and another moose has come through, and it's amazing how big animals can be so quiet in the right situation, the right weather. If it's just rained, So, and it's a thrill, and you hope something bad doesn't happen. But that's wildlife photography. It's being out there. It's no different than, and I heard this comparison before, but different taking the subway in Toronto, New York City. Things can happen, right?
Yeah.
But it's a matter of not pushing it. And I think, especially as I had more experience over the years, instead of trying to get close to an animal with the telephoto capability, we can be far enough back from them that they behave more naturally, and cool stuff happens then. Yeah, sure. In the other situation, they may be looking at the camera, you get good eye contact and you get a good portrait. But if you want the animal to relax and start doing behavior, being further away is better.
Yeah.
So if you want the wolf just to look at you as they're walking by, but if they're going to start playing, if you're not as close, you might get that, right? Or the pups come out. The pups didn't come out because there was pressure. But if the person's farther away, the rendezvous site, the pups show up. They start howling as the other wolf comes back. It's like, whoa, that was pretty amazing. So, I think people should always be aware of pressuring animals. At the same time, I think there are extremes where it's, there's super sensitivity where it's like, well, if the animal looks at you and alters its behavior, you've affected it. Well, I'm an animal too. I live on this planet. We are human beings. We live in, urban areas. We're overpopulated, but I'm in the wild with this animal. They're more perceptive than me, right? Because they live this world. Their senses are dialed in. I strive to have my senses dialed in, but there's no way they're going to know I'm there. They're going to look, they're going to go away or not. And so, I never want to push an animal by any means because it's just photography. The magical stuff happens without doing that. But I like to feel like I'm in the environment with them. And just to close on that subject, the animals that are near roads in places like Yellowstone or in the Rockies, are habituated. They've been raised there. So they're not stressed by people. They're stressed if people get too close, 100%. But they're there for varying reasons. Grizzly sows will have their cubs and be around people sometimes because they want to stay away from the boars in national parks where they are used to people. They see them walking trails, riding their bikes, driving the cars, the dogs barking, all these elements. So if a bear, that being said, they do travel. Not every bear that is at a road lives there, but those that do are habituated. But bears do, as other animals do, travel long distances, and it can be one just crossing that's not. But the point is, they're usually used to people, but at the same time, it doesn't make sense for the sake of a selfie with a smartphone over the shoulder. That's just silly stuff, right?
Right.
If it's close enough to put danger on any of the elements. So, but that happens roadside because it's where people it's a concentration of people. When you go on a trip to do wildlife photography off the road, it's amazing how quickly you lose people and it becomes more intimate, right?
Yeah. Very true.
Yeah. So watermarks on all your posts on social. Why should people be doing this?
Okay. I do it because my images are copyrighted and I license them. I make a living off it. I license them to all kinds of different companies, and it's, I have contracts, and I want to make it clear that the images aren't free to use because it's what I do for a living. I put a lot of effort, and I'm happy to have conversations with people who are interested in licensing images for any application. But artist reference is one, for example. I work with many artists that paint my images or draw them, various art forms, but I don't do it for free. If they're making revenue, it's copyrighted because I spent a lot of money on that trip. You guys would know what it costs on your last trip. And then I also hiked for a week and camped in the elements and had, this expensive camera equipment. So, it's not a selfish thing. It's just, it helps me continue to do what I love to do. And the copyright on it makes it clear that that's the case. It gives me recourse if something happens. And it is an interesting subject with social media because I know things would likely do better without it. I try to make it subtle, and I have colleagues that do copyright watermark them, and some are super subtle, some are not, and then there are those that don't too. But it's like Facebook, right? Instagram and Facebook are both meta, but they behave differently from what I've been told. So stuff on Facebook's public domain, and I had a long conversation years ago with my stock agent about these platforms and how to best manage them. And apparently on Facebook, anybody can use it. So a huge corporation can use the image on Facebook without paying for it, but they can't alter it. So by putting a watermark on it, then that would lose the appeal of using it without altering it, which would then break copyright law. So in other words, they would then, if they really wanted to use it, they would get in touch and license the image. But anyway, it depends on the objective of the person. If they just want to grow their social media and have lots of likes and followers, and not have it tied into revenue, it's the same with photo contests, right? I mean, they vary considerably across the platforms, as far as what happens with the images that are submitted. But watermarking it is one way, and I know it's limited. It's social media. It's like anything else, things are going to happen, and they do. But it's a way to make it clear that these are professional images, and that's why I do it.
Yeah, makes sense. So you wouldn't say for everyone to go out and do that?
It depends on what they feel about their work. If your work's important to you and you don't want it to be used elsewhere, and you want people to pause before they use it for whatever they're going to do, then I would. I do it, so I would recommend it, right? But I don't have every answer because social media is such a rapidly evolving platform that it's there are choices people make if they don't, for whatever reason. But for me, I have been in this business for a long time. There have been issues with copyright, but that's inevitable. And it's more common now, but it's still, the business is still viable, and we watch for that, and it's all part of doing business. It's been there before social media. But I think as for my role, for what I do, it's important, and I don't see changing that. But I don't for a second judge people, whether they do or not. It's of no consequence to me. This is just my work, so I do.
Right. How many books have you written, authored?
The entire book, I've done 4 books.
4.
Yeah.
I just bought.
They're awesome to do. I love a body of work.
Yeah.
Right?
For everyone listening and watching, I just bought Mark's Moose book. I saw it in the Visitor Center of Swift Current, Saskatchewan. If there's any Saskatchewanians, Saskatchewanites listening, represent. I saw the nice picture of the moose, saw your name. I was like, I'm going to pick this up. I haven't had a chance to read it front to back yet, but I think I sent you a picture, didn't I, Mark? I was like, hey, I bought your book. Excited to read it. Because I love moose. But my question for you is, so maybe this is more like an advanced intermediate question, but it doesn't need to be. This kind of information is always useful. What would you tell someone who's looking to create a photography book like the one you made, or like the ones you've made, rather?
Sure. Yeah.
Just if they have nowhere where to, I know that this could be an entire episode on its own, and we're well over the hour mark, but just where to begin? If somebody has the portfolio of work, let's say, already.
Right. Well, thank you for grabbing it. Do read it.
I'm gonna read it 10 to 15 times. I promise you.
Well, okay. That's flattering.
Well, don't get too flattered. I read every book 10 to 15 times.
Okay, that's cool. Why not?
But I'm saying yours is worth it. I'm sure it is.
Well, each chapter starts with a cool anecdotal story. I like that. I want to complement the biology and interesting behavior of the species with aspects that make people feel like they're there. So each chapter starts with that, and there's anecdotal stories throughout. So it's done really well. The Moose book's on its second printing, and well into its second printing, and it's available everywhere. And so is the Caribou book. I did 2 books on white-tailed deer. They're both out of print now. They're sold out and gone. I have the second one here. I have 50 some copies left here only.
We'll put a link to your website the best for people to
it depends. If they're in the United States, the website is the best. If they're in Canada,
most of our listeners are. So we'll put a link
Canada,
to. Okay. Well, we'll figure out the links after, but I'm letting people know that the links to those books will be in the episode description, regardless of where you're watching, listening.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I hold it up and see it there?
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, hell yeah. There it is. See, I forgot mine. I look like a lame ass. I promise you I bought it.
Oh, I saw it on your phone.
It is too.
We messaged me.
I know. Look at how thick it is too. It's awesome.
Now, how did you think of that title?
Well, it took 3 weeks in the field and feeling totally like reflective on life, and then
Creative.
It's part of marketing. It's got to strike, right?
Yeah.
If you think about a bookstore, you hope that when they market a book, it's faced. How often do you go in a bookstore and this is what you get to see?
Yeah.
Right on the shelf. It's like nobody sees it. Nobody's going to buy it.
I saw the picture of the moose. I saw it. It was like that. And I was like, I like moose.
Yeah, visitor centers are good. Natural history bookstores, they do feature every book well compared to the big ones. But it's Crown Giant of the Northern Wilderness. It's the subtitle. So we try to add the flavor, but we have to make it striking, image-wise and title-wise, right out of the gate. Any product, that's important. And these 2 were done with the same publisher, and this came out more recently. Both have won awards, and this is Caribou. And this covers, like Moose, it covers the species from coast to coast to coast. But as far as doing that kind of thing, it's so fulfilling, and I love mentally curating and collecting the images to build a story long enough to represent the species well through the seasons, through their lifespan, predator, prey, what they do, all those elements. It's fun to map it out, and then to complement the writing. It's almost like the images are there first, and then I build it around. I make sure that that's there. Caribou. This could run, so I'll try to keep it short.
Can we do a part 2, maybe entirely on publishing a photography book with you at some point?
Sure.
I'm not saying to cut it off now, but I would love. I personally would love to know more about that, because that's something I want to do in the future.
There's 2 options that you really out of the gate have to consider, and it's self-publishing or going with a publisher. And self-publishing in the digital era is becoming more and more easy, straightforward. And it's laying out a book is easy to do one by ourselves, or it's relatively inexpensive to hire somebody to lay it out and create a PDF if somebody's not comfortable with doing that. All the books I've done are through publishers because traditionally that is the best revenue generating, because they distribute the book, they pay for the book. The flip side is I get an advance and then a royalty, which is a fraction of. The publisher makes most of the money because they've taken the risk. They've paid the money, the tens of thousands to make the book because of the quantity they've ordered, and then the cost of distribution. Like, how do you get it to current Saskatchewan? Right? Do I self-publish it, fill my car, and drive across Canada to all the visitor centers?
You take a seaplane and you just chuck them out the window over every city in Canada.
Okay. All right. Well, are they prepaid? So, there there are outlets, so people do self-publish frequently now, and they do a circuit, or they'll have books with them, and when they hit places like that, they'll go in and say, "Hey, would you like to buy these?" Honestly, though, well, and that's fine, but when you sell it through a retailer like the Nature Center, they take 50%, which makes sense. They have their overhead, they have their staff. That's how it works. So that's cut part of the profit, which is still fine. The best way is just doing talks, right? So when you do a talk to a photo club and have books there, and if you sell 25 books, it's all the profit for the author who did it. But there's the expense that they have to outlay.
Right.
With digital, print runs are more flexible now, but obviously the more somebody prints, the cheaper it is per book, and the more profit there is per book at the price point.
Right.
So self-publishing, you can pick your own price point. Whereas the publisher, I mean, these books are crazy, amazing prices. Moose is $20 and the Caribou's
I was
25.
shocked. I was like,
Right?
that's it?
Like a big magazine, $19.99. It's like
Yeah. So for your own feedback, when I looked at it, I was like, this is really well done. It's not cheap and it's really affordable. Why would I not buy this?
And that's the philosophy of the publisher. When we were talking about price point, the owner of the publishing company wanted it to be a no-brainer and therefore sell more.
Right.
And we would have a smaller profit margin per product, per book, but overall sell thousands more books.
So working on volume.
So there's, business is fun, right? Photography is amazing, but this is the business side of it too, right? So what's a price point where it's going to sell? How much profit can you make per book and still sell? And how you can sell maybe a third as many books if it's more expensive and make the same amount of money. Which way you're going to go?
Right.
But then the books cost, X number of dollars per book to print. Do you print 500 books? Do you print 2,500 books? Do you print 4,000 books?
Mm-hmm. And what's the value of having more books for less profit in the hands of people that maybe book a trip, that maybe buy a print, etc.?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Smart observation.
Mm-hmm.
The books themselves are one of the best branding tools a person
right. It's
can
a
have.
giant, beautiful business card.
Yes, for sure. It gives authentic street cred to that person because they've proven their experience, and the quality is apparent, whether it's good or bad. It's there. It's laid out on the pages, right? So it is. But to me, the books have actually been more advantageous in opening all kinds of doors in the publishing world, in the guiding. They're wonderful that way because they do share that. But far more important to me is the body of work. I just, I've loved this career and I continue to. I am as passionate about it as when I was in my early 20s when I started. And it's so meaningful to have this, the Moose book was, 15, 20 years in the making of images, and it shares stories with each of my kids and friends. And so it's at the end of a career, you have architects who might say, they've designed this amazing building and it's a highlight and they can look at it and appreciate what they've done for effort. And books are like that, magazines and any calendars, any print media are fantastic, but they don't stay on the table. They don't stay in front of us as long.
Yeah. And what you said is important though, right? You said this is 15, 20 years of work condensed into how many pages? 100 and something?
160.
Right.
Yeah. I think, 160 pages. Yeah.
Like good things take time is my point.
Well, that's what makes it more gratifying too.
Right. And you're talking about long-term gratification in a world where it's more and more short-term.
Sure. Yeah. And I think it's healthy to hold on to that and work on projects that take time. And again, that's not to dissuade people. A book doesn't need 15 years. I had that by the time I was asked to do the book. I had the content and I spent a year flushing it out to finish it. The Caribou book, I was given 3 months. So we licensed about 20 images out of the 150, 100, 160 to get it to be as good as it could be, to represent everything about caribou. We had planned on another year of being in the field, but again, business. There were no new books at the
Right.
time on caribou, and the publisher said, "Let's do it. You want to do it now?" And I'm like, "Well, it's money now as opposed to a year from now. So yeah, let's do it now."
Right.
So
Things
we
can
like,
change. Right.
right? Yeah. 2 caribou books come out in the next year while we're working on it. And then the publisher says, "Oh, that's not good. Let's just shelve it for 2 more years until it gets quiet
Yeah.
again."
You're like, I
Right.
should have said yes.
So
Yeah.
you do. But yeah, anyway, but it doesn't, there are ways, there are places to go, but you still, even in places where the bears are, in a case in point, so accessible, you can't tell the whole story to create a book of that species life in a handful of trips,
Right.
because of seasonality. I mean, there were images I've seen this summer of friends of ours with wolves trying to lure cubs away from a sow, right, in Alaska for predation. Didn't happen, but to have the images to tell that story
That's
just
gnarly.
makes the book that much richer. Because as you turn the page and you see that, it's like, whoa, what's happening? Why is there a wolf? Why is this bear cub running toward it and the mom's there? And then you read and it's like, whoa, this is intense. Has the potential to be. This is the world outside the walls we live in, right? Which is what draws us all out there. So those rare behavioral images, really flesh it out. But that's the fun. That's the reward of the multiple times out doing it.
Yeah. No kidding.
It's like that, right? You think of people love collecting anything in life, right?
Yeah.
We're collecting a body of work on a species to create a book, and that is fulfilling in a similar way to collecting anything.
Yeah, for sure. Aaron, you want to ask our golden question?
Yeah. Back when you started photography 72 years ago.
Stop. Guys.
What a dick.
You said you used the hood thing. And
this camera's now shut off too, Aaron. It's not working anymore either.
Mark, you said you used the hood thing,
guys.
and you pressed the bulb. You knew all about it.
No, I've seen pictures, my friend.
That stuff's old.
No,
Aaron's humor is amazing.
Cameras I started with look just like the cameras I use now, as far as the exterior goes.
Yeah.
Just have different.
Aaron's humor is
prototypes.
incredible. I love it.
Prototypes. No, Mark.
If you put those numbers, you'd be almost accurate.
27.
Yeah. Almost.
No, starting off though, we ask this question a lot, I think, and maybe you have to transpose time a little bit for the new age, and there's social media, there's this incredible equipment. And I think we've touched upon it a little bit, but advice you would give your younger self in terms of starting out this career or this passion. It doesn't even have to be a career. People out there aren't always trying to make money with this. They just love the passion, and that is perfectly good. Arguably maybe even better if it's giving you something completely pure. You don't have to worry about the business part of it. But what advice would you give your younger self if you could start over? 1 to 2 things, and that'll be our wrap up.
Yeah, that's a great question. I've had friends. Usually, when I go backcountry in Alaska, I take one other person with me. I don't do a solo trip for a variety of reasons. And there was a gentleman from Seattle went with me for a couple of years. Great friend, great sense of humor. But he didn't at that time didn't need money. He did it for the love of it, the joy of it. And he pointed that out. And early on, people would say they could see the hunger in your eyes, trying to get it to make it work, right? Whereas he could just take it in and not have the pressure. So there is a significant element to that. So listeners, that the win is not necessarily making a living at it. The win is being there and enjoying it.
Mhm.
And if I was to parlay that into recommendation for my younger self, it would be that throughout I'm, in my mind's eye, I'm still totally capable of doing everything I've done in my career physically. But I also recognize life is finite. And I've had, people very close to me that are younger than me pass away for various things and tragedies. And this planet is amazing. Yeah, the natural history, the wildlife, the diversity I can't wrap one's mind around it. There's so much incredible species out there, and how they work together, how this planet evolves and works together. It would be the advice would be to try to more frequently take a step back and just see that and enjoy that. The photography, is important. And as a career, it's important to have the images. If they're not there, there's no career. So there's that drive. And some of the best experiences have happened because of the drive, because of the push, hiking the extra 5 miles that day and finding something magical that wouldn't have happened, or 15 miles or whatever it might be. But life is short, guys. And we live in an amazing time to have these opportunities to travel to places, to see this stuff, to have the freedom and the resources to be able to go to these destinations like you're doing, and just always to keep that in mind and enjoy it, and don't sweat the small stuff, right? There's too much joy and love in this planet and thrills to be had without sweating the small stuff, and then take it in.
Amen.
Incredible. Mark, thanks so much. I learned a ton today. Super appreciative of your time. Links to Mark's website, books, and the podcast, Beyond the Wilds. If you like Jason's episode, this is his co-host Mark, so go check that show out. That'll be in the episode description as well. And just super grateful for your time today, man. Really appreciate it.
Fun. Yeah, I love your energy, love your show, and it's been fun. And I honestly, one of the things on my trips with people that I get to know well enough, I love the pranks, man. I love the poking and the back and forth.
Yeah, you're a good sport.
Part of it. Yeah.
Well, you guys said that I didn't know what books and magazines were, and I just had to make you feel real bad when I reminded you that I bought your book.
Yeah. I think I was the only one that wasn't attacked in this episode.
There's too much to go after. That's why. There's too much to go after.
As a first-time guest, I have to play by the rules. So
that's right. Be polite.
But I appreciate all the humor and what you guys are doing, and sharing on a podcast is fun. So thanks for having me on. I appreciate that. I appreciate.
Hopefully we shoot sometime. That'd be nice.
That would be great. Let's keep in touch. I would welcome that opportunity. It'd be fun. I think we could have a lot of fun in the field.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. Till next time, gents.
Take care.